Hello everyone, I'm so excited to be here. My name is Alan Nelson, I'm 28. I'm an undergraduate from BITS Pilani, Dubai. I graduated in 2016. I'm also a TEDx speaker. I'm a recipient of the Rex Karmavi Chakra Award, which is constituted by the UN. I'm also a graduate alumni from GGI in public policy, and I'm currently pursuing my master's from Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. Now you must be wondering, why is a mechanical engineer pursuing social development and not going a traditional path? I'll tell you why. So this goes back in 2016 when I was in my undergraduate in Dubai. So over there we had an internship wherein you had to work in a company for credit. So I was working in one such company with the site engineer, and I had to work with the construction workers, keep stock of the inventory, do a lot of documentation and report writing. And one fine construction worker, I resonated with him because he spoke my native language. He was from Kerala. He spoke Malayalam. We got to know about each other. I asked him about his story, and that's where my life changed. So what he told me next shocked my entire world. He told me that he was living in a small studio apartment which is shared by 10 to 15 construction workers, just so that they can reduce rent and he could save enough money to send back home. And when I asked him about who are his dependents, he told me that he had a son who was the same age as me but didn't have any financial access for education. So he was saving up and sacrificing his comforts for his son. And his mother, the son's mother, that is his wife, she was working in different houses as a maid, and the son himself was working in a cycle shop part-time, so that they could save enough so that he could go ahead and study. And that's when I felt I was privileged, and at that moment my comfort bubble just exploded. That was my aha moment, and two questions loomed in my head. My first question to myself was, what the hell am I doing with my life? I'm about to become an engineer and I don't have solution. I can't help people. I don't know what to do. And the second question was, how do I do it? Even if I wanted to do, how will I do it? What is the platform? Where do I start? What do I study? I had no idea for any of this. Soon in 2016, I graduated. Most of my friends, they got placed in well-paying job in Dubai. Some even went abroad for pursuing their masters. I got a few offers in Dubai, but I rejected and I decided to come back home. My parents were not quite happy with my decision, as they were quite furious with my choice. But nevertheless, the lingering thought of that person and his son, and the lack of opportunities in India, which forces people to migrate for better employment, was quite looming in my head, and I wanted to find solutions for it. At that time, one of my friend was doing his Teach for India fellowship program, and he told me that that could be a good opportunity to start. I never considered myself as a teacher because I was very poor in my academics, so I thought of exploring something else, and that's when I was flipping through the television. I came across State Bank of India's Youth for India fellowship program in rural development, and that's when I thought, okay, fine, this could be my the platform where I could begin. So I'm placed in rural Rajasthan, and I had no idea what project I should be working on. Most of my peers already began with the project, and I had no idea what to do, and the only thing that I was quite good at was sports. So I thought, okay, fine, let's start playing sports with the kids. And that's when one young girl, she held my hand and she told me that all the city kids have all the access and platforms to even showcase their talents. All we need is just one chance. And there was this huge lump in my throat on hearing this, because it was too difficult for me to fathom the depth, the feelings of a child. So I went back to the washroom, wiped off my tears, and I came back and I told the kids, okay, fine, this is going to be the project. I'm going to try to develop a sports ground and develop a platform for these rural kids to showcase their talents. And that's how my work in holistic sports development in rural Rajasthan began. The challenge that was there when I first started working was the sports equipments. The kids did not have access to sports equipments. And at that time I was earning around 16,000 rupees as my fellowship stipend. So I used 3 months of my savings to be able to afford the sports equipments, and during those times it was actually quite hard, and I survived only on biscuits and water. That was the time when I finally was able to realize what it actually meant to be hungry. So in order to sleep I used to fill my stomach with water so that I could wake up the next day. But somehow the kids got the wind of this, and the next day all of the kids, they started sharing a piece of their lunch and food with me. So that actually helped me to survive those few months, so that I was able to afford the sports equipments for the rural kids. So that's how kindness and such kind of service is quite infectious, and it works in marvelous ways, and you never know how the universe comes to help you. Another challenge that I had when I was working with sports is that we didn't have a sports ground for the kids to practice, and we were crunched up on the finances. We didn't have any funding allocated for sports development or ground development. But yeah, luckily we had the railway construction just across our school ground, and they had all the machinery for the development of the sports ground. So every day I used to go there, have a chat. That's where I learned the importance of networking and relationship building. And luckily, a few of their kids used to go to the same school, and I told them that this is a plan that I have, and I don't have money or finance to able to execute this. I'm facing such a challenge of having I don't have machinery to develop the sports ground. So that's how miraculously things start to take place, and they volunteered to sacrifice their lunch hours to help me develop the sports ground, and finally we were able to develop the sports ground for the rural kids to practice and be able to learn and grow. In the rural villages, girls are not so promoted to pursue sports. It's because there's a huge social stigma as well as gender biasness when it comes to participation in sports. But it was a difficult challenge, and fast forward 13 months of my development in rural development through the fellowship, we managed to get 2 girls selected for state level in Kabaddi, which was quite an achievement in that rural school. We also managed to create a soft skill development workshop which got incorporated in the school curriculum, wherein kids could address bullying, domestic violence, sexual abuse, all of these discussions. They were given a platform to start anonymous discussions so that mitigation steps could be taken by teachers to help these children. So in that way, the small step into the development world was begun by me, and the next step is that after increasing the student participation by over 200% in the school, and also bridging the gap of boys is to girls and bringing it back to 1:1 participation, the organization was quite impressed, and they absorbed me as a full-time consultant, and I was told to develop a solar coffee roasting machine. So that was my next project which I had to work on. And me coming from a mechanical engineering background, I was an engineer on paper, so I had never invented anything in my life, and it was quite a new concept for me to fathom, to even assimilate and be able to train rural people in manufacturing. So for that I had to begin somewhere, and I was just walking around rural Rajasthan with 53 degrees Celsius, the hot summers of Rajasthan, and I saw a small kid playing and fiddling with the magnifying glass, and that's when I thought, okay fine, maybe you could use this concept and extrapolate it into a bigger model to roast coffee. So there were these parabolic reflectors which were not being used much. It was only used primarily for rural cooking. So I thought, why don't I, optimize it and repurpose it to roast coffee. So that's where the idea incepted to begin. So my first model was quite primitive. It was a hand-driven rotating drum wherein I have to sit next to the machine and rotate the drums so that it could roast coffee. But it was not a viable option because of the hot summers of Rajasthan. I ended up roasting myself along with the beans, so it was not feasible. So I had to develop some solution to automate it. So again, I was looking for inspiration and ideas, and that's when I got the idea from a sewing machine, wherein they have those fan belt and those rotating pulley systems. So I thought, why don't I incorporate that and power it by a solar panel to automate the machine. So that was my second iteration, and it was quite challenging. I failed over 20 to 30 times, multiple failures, like overburned coffee, because you had to get the right things right. And there was no research and development in the rural villages. It is all T&E, that is trial and error. So it was quite a daunting task, but finally we managed to create a working prototype that actually worked, and initially people never believed. They would start making fun of us that what are you doing, nobody has ever done something like this in India. Like, it was quite difficult, but I think perseverance and continual failure evidently helps you to crack the problem and get the right solution, I guess. Then comes my next challenge, is that what about the cloudy weather and the optimization of temperature control. All of those technicalities were quite a challenge, so I had to scrap the model all over again and make a bigger model which is powered solely by DC electricity, which is stored from energy capacitors. So all those technical aspects I had to do research on my own, and also simultaneously dummy it down to a level where a local rural woman is able to manufacture and replicate the process. So the biggest challenge for me, being fresh out of college, was thinking from first principles, and that took 3 years of my life in rural development, and it helped me to be able to keep things simple and easily replicable, also at the same time thinking locally, that is local solutions to solve global problems, which is the key component for making things sustainable. So the next step was the downstream operations of this entire value chain, that is selling this product, this roasted product. So when it comes to roasting, I had to train a rural grandmother, because I chose to work with grandmothers because they are the ones who are most neglected in our society, because they are considered as a burden, and there has been a rise in old age homes where kids don't take care of their grandmothers. So I thought of, why not use grandmothers to be pollinators of social change in our society. So that's where Khatun Chachi, 63 years old grandmother, comes into the picture. She was my production staff. She was illiterate, she didn't know how to read and write, she didn't know how to operate the machine. So everything had to be done visually, and it was quite a challenge for me, but she was a tiger, she did not give up. And in a span of 3 years, she was able to do not only just 4 different types of roast, she was also able to blend coffee beans, and she was also able to package it, do inventory management, be able to read and write, do calculations. It was quite an inspiration for me to see that age is just a number when it comes to education. You just have to persevere and push your barriers. Now that the product and everything is ready, now you have to turn it into a social enterprise which is driven by women. That was my next step. In order to do that, you have to do your value chain identification, you have to identify your key stakeholders. All of those were like quite a new thing, new concept for me. It's basically the inception of a startup, basically. So all these concepts. So I took it one step at a time. I started with a pilot project in Andhra Pradesh with 9 tribal women. I trained them in sustainable agriculture, that is permaculture, so that they could be averted from the monocropping, which is quite hazardous to our environment. I wanted to create an entire value chain which is addressing UN Sustainable Development Goals, and I tried to maximize it as much as I could, because I use solar energy to roast coffee, which reduces the carbon footprint further. Because I think a cup of cappuccino causes around 200 grams of CO2 or something, cafe latte. So that's quite a lot of carbon footprint, and you multiply that with the number of people in the consumption, you can see the exponential numbers of the carbon pollution. So I wanted to reduce that altogether through the value chain, and that was the process which I went ahead with. So I had to do a lot of learning and unlearning and relearning in the process of this intervention. When it comes to roasting, I actually had to learn the art of roasting from a certified professional. So I went for coffee cupping and grading workshops where I was educated in the art of roasting, and I was able to carry out the learnings and impart the same to the rural women, so that they could also replicate it in their value chain, and in order to make it more sustainable and less dependent on external factors. So I did that, and we applied for funding. So we managed to create a public-private partnership model with external donors as well as the government of India, and we finally managed to scale it from 9 tribal women to 550. We were able to raise about around $200,000 and create livelihoods for around 20,000 households. I was also be able to make the entire project and the intervention sustainable, and then finally I was able to quit my job in 2020. I'll share a few clips which will act as a window into my world for you guys to see and visualize, and be able to assimilate what my world was. So here it is.
Man, you should have seen them. They totally hate me. How's Shifu ever going to turn me into the Dragon Warrior? I've got no claws, no wings, no venom. Maybe I should just quit and go back to making noodles.
Quit, don't quit. Noodles, don't noodles. You are too concerned with what was and what will be. There's a saying, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That is why it is called the present.
also able to study for my masters because of my parents. They actually had to sell their house so that I could afford my studies. I was able to actually resonate with that kid whose parents were sacrificing so that he could afford education, and I'm quite grateful and I'm indebted to everyone. So I just hope to be able to pay this forward and pollinate social change in our society. So come join us, join the change. Let's make the world a better place to live. Thank you.